You mentioned in the last part of that answer the Sacketts, and I wanted to talk a little bit more about them. Their case brings out something that a lot of the others don't. When a city makes a zoning ordinance, people know what they can do in different parts of the area that's zoned. The Sacketts had, I think, more uncertainty. So I'm wondering if you can just tell the audience, like, how does uncertainty arise by government regulation?
Well, it's almost impossible for anybody but a wetland expert to determine what is and what is not a wetland under the federal definition. I talked about you have to have certain types of vegetation growing. You have to have saturation 18 inches below the soil for a couple weeks a year, so on and so forth. You have to have people coming out and do borings. And the Sackett's case is emblematic of that. When they first started to develop their property by clearing some land, they were visited by an EPA official, probably tipped off by a NIMBY neighbor, and the EPA official said, "You're in wetlands, you have to stop." Well, Mrs. Sackett, Chantel Sackett, said, "Well, how do you know that?" And the EPA official said, "It's on the map." Chantel Sackett got the map of the wetlands of the area. She looked at it, and she immediately called the EPA and said, "Look, my property's not on the map. Can I go ahead and develop now?" And the official said, "No, no, those maps aren't accurate." Well, this went back and forth for a long time. She and her husband eventually received a compliance order saying that they had to stop doing any work of their property. They had to remove all the fill that they put on their property. They had to replant wetland vegetation as if it was there in the first place. They had to fence it off, and they had to wait a few years. After a few years, they were allowed to ask for an after the fact permit to legalize what they had done before. Not a permit necessarily to go ahead and develop, but just to make it legal so they wouldn't do it. Now, they were also told if they didn't do that, they would be subject to fines for violating the Clean Water Act of $37,500 a day and an additional $37,500 a day for violating the compliance order. They objected. They said, "We don't think the property is wetland." I hired an expert. The expert came out, former Corps of Engineers biologist. He said, "It's not a wetland." They eventually were told they could not even argue in court whether or not it was a wetland.